The time is 6:15. Here's the news, edited by Dilini Gunawardana, read by Victor Raj. Here are the headlines of the local news. The National Transport Commission is authorized to take decisions pertaining to the charges of the public transportation. Law will be strictly enforced against those who misuse the increase of the VAT tax. Cabinet green lights initial phase of the fuel storage tank development in Trincomalee. It is disclosed that there has been no proper coordination between the relevant entities regarding taking action on the Express Pearl disaster. The Mahanayaka Thera of the Malwatha chapter says that abolishment of the executive presidency has been a mere promise. Foreign news: 5 dead on Coast Guard plane after Japan Airlines crash in Tokyo. Sports news: tennis. Rafael Nadal wins at Brisbane International on long-awaited return from injury. Local news in detail. The government has decided to give the National Transport Commission the authority to take decisions pertaining to the charges and fares levied for public transportation, including railways, three-wheelers and school transport services. Speaking at the Cabinet press conference held today, Minister Dr. Bandula Gunawardana said the relevant documents have been sent to the Attorney General in order to amend the relevant act. Minister Gunawardana also emphasized that a Cabinet paper was submitted informing to hand over the authority to make decisions regarding the fares charged in relation to the transport sector to the National Transport Commission. The minister added that this would result in the establishment of a more reasonable pricing policy. Replying a concern raised by the journalist, he further said that the government would strictly enforce the law against those who misuse the increase of the VAT tax. A proposal to select a prospective investor for the first phase of the development of 61 fuel storage tanks in the upper tank area of the China Bay harbour of Trincomalee was approved at a cabinet meeting held on Monday. The cabinet meeting held on 3rd January 2022 marked a significant decision as the Sri Lankan government granted approval to lease 61 fuel container tanks in the upper tank area of the China harbour Trincomalee. The lease, spanning 50 years, is aimed at facilitating the strategic development of these fuel tanks. Following the decision, Trincomalee Terminal Private Limited is set to undertake the lease, initiating the project with the comprehensive feasibility study. The proposed development plan outlines a phased approach spanning 16 years and 7 phases. Under the initial phase, 9 productive tanks will undergo renovation. A pipeline extending approximately 1.75 kilometers will be laid, and essentials supporting facilities will be constructed. The Sectoral Oversight Committee on Environment, Natural Resources and Sustainable Development discloses that there has been no proper coordination between the relevant entities regarding taking action on the Express Pearl disaster. This matter was taken into discussion at length at the committee meeting chaired by MP Ajith Mana Perma. Meanwhile, the Sectoral Oversight Committee on National Security took into discussion matters contained in the National Hydrographic Bill, which gives the necessary legal authority to create electronic navigational charts to Sri Lanka can earn an annual dollar income for ships sailing near Sri Lanka's water. The Parliamentary Communications Department said it was taken into discussion when the said committee met in Parliament recently under the chairmanship of MP Dr. Sarath Veerasekara. However, the committee chair pointed out that this bill is currently scheduled to be debated in the Parliament and pointed out that during the committee stage, opportunity will be given to add amendments to it. This news comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Continuing with more local news, the present Mahanayaka Thera of the Malwata chapter, Tibbatuave Sri Siddhartha Sumangala Thera, says that all the leaders that promised to abolish the executive presidency forgot their promise as soon as they ascended to the president's chair. The topic will be brought to attention in the future as soon as the election date is fixed. The Venerable Thera made these remarks when the convener of the National Movement for Social Justice, Karu Jayasuriya, met him at the Malwata Vihara. Karu Jayasuriya said that a narrow-minded political propagandas refrained the abolishment of the executive presidency throughout the history. The Cabinet has given the nod to formulate a national policy framework with the participation of experts to get the contribution of the agricultural sector to build a developed Sri Lanka by 2048. Further, the approval was granted to establish a Secretariat for Modernization of Agriculture sector under the Office of the President. Approval was also granted to set up agriculture sector modernization services and awareness centers at the Divisional Secretariat Division level for an effective establishment and well-coordinated implementation of the agricultural sector modernization activities. Additionally, approval was granted to amend the Agricultural Development Act and other relevant legislations to implement the proposed program. These proposals were tabled by President Ranil Wickremesinghe at the Cabinet meeting held on Monday. That ends local news.
The main news story is brought to you by Sinhala Mahatma.
The Cabinet has approved a proposal to announce the Aseri Port City Hospital Private Company as a primary business of strategic importance through a Gazette notification and to grant related exemptions for incentives. Earlier it was proposed by Aseri Port City Hospitals Private Company to implement a project to develop a hospital within the Colombo Port City under an investment of $100 million. Accordingly, the relevant project was deemed eligible for exemptions for incentives under $2 billion of Colombo City guidelines on the grant of the exceptions of incentives to business of strategic importance, Regulations number 2 of 2023. That came to you on Main News Story.
The Main News Story was brought to you by Sinhala Mahatma.
This is Watchlight.
Sri Lanka Police introduced a hotline for the public to provide information in relation to the ongoing massive anti-drug operation Yuktiya, which is being carried out across the island. The hotline was introduced under the directive of the Acting Inspector General of Police, Desabandhu Thennakoon, while stickers displaying the relevant hotline number were also pasted on the back of three-wheelers today. Accordingly, the public has been urged to contact the police headquarters via the phone number 071 859 8800 if they have any information about drug-related offenders or underworld activities. That came to you on Watchlight.
Coming up, World News.
Let's take a look at the headlines. 5 dead on coastal plane after Japan Airlines crash in Tokyo. Ukraine hit again after Putin involved intensified strikes. Thailand and China are to waive visa requirements from March. Foreign news in detail. 5 people aboard a Japanese Coast Guard plane have died after their aircraft collided with the passenger plane at Tokyo's Haneda Airport. The Coast Guard plane was due to deliver aid to areas hit by Monday's deadly earthquake. All 379 people on board the burning Japanese Airlines plane were evacuated. Fire ripped through the Japan Airlines Flight 516, which had taken off from Hokkaido in northern Japan 2 hours earlier. Russian missiles have hit Ukraine's biggest cities, leaving 4 dead and dozens hurt after Vladimir Putin vowed to intensify attacks. A woman was killed and 41 others were hurt in the northeastern city of Kharkiv, according to local officials. The Kyiv mayor said that at least 1 person died and 27 were wounded as several blocks of flats were hit as a result of the Russian strikes. 2 more deaths were reported in the broader Kyiv region. There have been major airline assaults by both sides in recent days. Thai Prime Minister Srettha Thavisin said Thailand and China will permanently waive visa requirements for each other's citizens from March. Thailand waived a visa for Chinese nationals in September in a bid to boost tourist arrivals. The program saw strong response at a time when Thailand was starting to lose its appeal for Chinese travelers. Authorities said over 22,000 Chinese entered the Southeast Asian nation in the first 2 days of the waiver. The Thai Tourism Authority has set a target of 8.2 million Chinese tourists for 2024. To wrap up the world news, let's take a look at the headlines. 5 dead on Coast Guard plane after Japan Airlines crash in Tokyo. Ukraine hit again after Putin vows intensified strikes. Thailand and China are to waive visa requirements for March. That ends world news. Moving on to development news, according to Chairman of the Sri Lanka Tourist Development Authority Priyantha Fernando, Sri Lanka has welcomed 210,552 tourists in December, taking the total for the year to 1,487,303. The top market was India with 43,973 visitors, followed by the Russian Federation with 29,657 visitors. In December, the top 5 tourist markets were India, Russia, United Kingdom, Germany and Australia. That came to you on Development News.
Moving on with sports news.
Rafael Nadal impressed on his long-awaited return after almost a year out with injury as he beat Dominic Thiem at the Brisbane International. The 37-year-old, contesting his first single match since a second-round loss at the Australian Open 349 days ago, sealed a 7-5, 6-1 win. Spain's 22-time Grand Slam champion has indicated his season will likely to be last for his illustrious career, while Nadal is using the tournament to prepare for Australian Open. The first Grand Slam of the year starts on 14th January in Melbourne. That ends sports news.
Go ekak tiyana youth eකට life එකේ change එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න as වහගෙන දැකපු වීන හැබැ කරන්න youth එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න friendship එක මෙන්න.
The all new NSB Ithru Mithru account. NSB IM, a plan for your dream.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Link Natural Products Private Limited secured 3 major prestigious awards of the excellence on the national stage, competing against the best of the best across all sectors. In an impressive and outstanding achievement, Link Natural was bestowed with the Best Exporter Herbal and Ayurveda Award at the Eminent Presidential Exporter Award 2022-2023. This is the highest honor bestowed upon Sri Lankan exporters, and it is the testament to the company's commitment to excellence in export performances. That ends Business News.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Go එකක් තියන youth එකට life එකේ change එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න ඇස් වහගෙන දැකපු වීන හැබැයි කරන්න youth එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න friendship එක මෙන්න.
The all-new NSB Ithru Mithru account. NSB IM, a plan for your dream.
Moving on to economic news, the Sri Lanka Gem and Jewellery Association, in collaboration with the National Gem and Jewellery Authority and Export Development Board, proudly announces the grand celebration of the 30th edition of Facets, Asia's premier gem and jewellery exhibition, scheduled to take place at the esteemed Cinnamon Grand, Colombo from January 6 to January 8, 2024. This milestone event marks 30 years of successful highlighting the splendor and glamour of Sri Lankan gems and jewellery in the global stage. That came to you on Economic News.
Weather report.
A few showers will occur in the eastern and north-central provinces and in Matali district. Showers or thunder showers will occur at several places in the western, Samragama, southern and Upa provinces and Nuwara district after 2 p.m. Fairly heavy showers above 50 mm are likely at some places in the Galle, Mathura and Ratnapura districts. Misty conditions can be expected at some places in the western, Samragama and central provinces during the morning. That ends weather report. To wrap up the evening news on Radio Sri Lanka, let's take a look at the headlines once again. The National Transport Commission is authorized to take decisions pertaining to the charges of public transportation. Law will be strictly enforced against those who misuse the increase of VAT tax. Cabinet greenlights initial phase of fuel storage tank development in Trincomalee. It is disclosed that there has been no proper coordination between the relevant entities regarding taking action on the Express Pearl disaster. The Mahanayaka Thera of the Malwatha chapter says that abolishment of the executive presidency has been a mere promise. Foreign news, 5 dead on Coast Guard plane after Japan Airlines crash in Tokyo. Sports news, tennis, Rafael Nadal wins at Brisbane International on long-awaited return from injury. With that, we wrap up the evening news on Radio Sri Lanka. Back to my good friend and yours, Chandima Birakorn.